Park Min-jun stood quietly at the back of the Great Council chamber, watching as the galaxy's most powerful beings argued about trade routes and territorial disputes. His small tablet glowed softly as he tracked supply shipments, maintenance schedules, and communication networks across 300 star systems. Nobody looked at him. They never did. The Krillian commander Vex Thigh slammed his massive fist on the curved table that dominated the center of the chamber. His scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his voice boomed across the room. The eastern sectors need stronger military presence. My fleets can handle any threat. The other council members nodded and made notes. Min-jun quietly updated his records. Vex Thigh's fleets needed new fuel supplies every 2 weeks, replacement parts for their weapons every month, and fresh food deliveries every 10 days. Without Min-jun's logistics network, those mighty warships would drift dead in space within a month. High Arbiter Zex Kala raised one of her 4 arms for silence. Her skin shifted from blue to purple, showing her annoyance. Commander, your military might is impressive, but we must consider economic factors. Min-jun's tablet chimed softly. A supply convoy had arrived at Station 7 Alpha ahead of schedule. He made a note to adjust the delivery timetables for the next sector. The conversation continued around him, but his attention was caught by something else in his data. 3 asteroid mining operations in the Outer Rim had stopped transmitting 2 days ago. Not unusual by itself, but his network showed no equipment failures, no distress calls, and no requests for repair teams. The facilities had simply gone silent. Zara Velthara, one of the youngest Zephyrian scientists on the council, noticed Min-jun typing. She was different from the others. While most aliens treated humans like useful furniture, she sometimes asked Min-jun questions about logistics and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Park Min-jun, she said during a break in the meeting. Is there anything unusual in your reports today? Min-jun looked up from his tablet. Zara's large eyes reflected the chamber lights, and her silver skin had a curious pattern of lines across her forehead. Just some communication gaps in the Outer Rim, Dr. Velthara. Nothing serious. Communication gaps? 3 mining stations went quiet 2 days ago. Could be solar storm interference or equipment problems. I have repair teams heading out tomorrow. Zara nodded. But Min-jun saw concern in her expression. She had been studying ancient history lately, reading about old threats and forgotten enemies. Most council members thought her research was a waste of time. The meeting resumed, and Commander Vex Thigh continued his speech about military expansion. Humans make excellent support staff, he declared, gesturing vaguely toward Min-jun. They handle all the boring work so real warriors can focus on important battles. Several council members laughed. Min-jun did not react. He had heard such comments thousands of times over the past 20 years. Humans were useful for running supply lines, fixing broken equipment, and managing communication networks. They were not warriors or scientists or leaders. They were just there. But Min-jun remembered his grandfather's stories about the old days before humans joined the Galactic Council. Stories about preparation, about watching, about waiting for the right time. Stories that most humans had forgotten, but some still remembered. His tablet chimed again. Another mining station had gone silent. This one, in a completely different sector. Min-jun felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He quietly marked the location and cross-referenced it with stellar maps and shipping routes. The pattern was wrong. These were not random equipment failures. After the meeting ended, Min-jun returned to his small office deep in the station's administrative levels. The walls were covered with displays showing supply routes, fleet positions, and communication networks across the galaxy. To most people, it looked like boring logistics data, but Min-jun saw something else. He pulled up the locations of all the silent mining stations and overlaid them on a 3-dimensional star map. The pattern became clearer. Whatever was causing the communication losses was moving in a specific direction, following old hyperspace routes that had been abandoned centuries ago. Minjun opened a secure communication channel, one that did not appear on any official council records. He typed a simple message: Pattern Alpha detected. 7 installations dark. Request guidance. The response came back within minutes. Confirmed. Continue monitoring. Prepare Phase 1 protocols. Minjun erased the conversation and returned to his regular work. Over the next few hours, he received 17 routine supply requests, 4 maintenance orders, and 2 emergency repairs. He processed them all efficiently while keeping part of his attention on the Outer Rim situation. By evening, 2 more stations had gone silent. Dr. Velthara found him in his office near midnight, carrying a stack of old data tablets. Minjun, I have been researching those communication gaps you mentioned. I think we need to be worried. Minjun looked up from his displays. Why? I found references to similar disappearances in the historical archives. Ancient records from before the Galactic Council existed. Entire star systems would lose contact with the outside galaxy, one by one, following predictable patterns. What happened to them? Zara set down her tablets and activated a holographic display. Ancient star charts appeared in the air between them, showing the expansion of something dark across multiple sectors. They were consumed. Completely. No survivors. No traces. No remains. Just empty space, where thriving civilizations used to exist. Minjun studied the ancient patterns. They matched his current data almost perfectly. What caused it? The records call them devourers, some kind of machine intelligence that feeds on technology and organic life. They disappeared thousands of years ago. But the old archives suggest they were not destroyed, just sleeping. Minjun felt that cold feeling again, stronger this time. And you think they are waking up? Oh, I hope I am wrong, Zara said quietly. But the patterns match too closely to ignore. We should report this to the council. Minjun nodded, but he was already thinking about other things. That night, he sent another secure message. Ancient threat confirmed. Dr. Velthara suspects truth. Phase 2. Standby. The response was immediate. Understood. All units report ready. The long wait is almost over. Minjun deleted the conversation and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow, he would continue his boring logistics work while the council ignored the growing threat in the Outer Rim. But deep in the abandoned sectors of space, things were stirring that would change everything. The galaxy thought it knew humans. It was about to learn how wrong it had been. Dr. Kim So-young had spent most of her life studying dead civilizations, but she had never seen anything like this. The archaeological survey ship times, silent discovery times, drifted through what used to be the Kepler-7 system, and there was simply nothing left. The stellar mass is correct, reported her assistant, Dr. Chen Wei-ming, checking his instruments for the 5th time. The star is still there, still burning. But everything else is gone. So-young stared at the empty space through the ship's main viewport. According to the records, this system had contained 6 planets, 3 asteroid belts, and over 40 mining stations. 2 million people had lived and worked here just 1 week ago. Now there was nothing but cosmic dust and the lonely star. Run another deep scan, she ordered. Look for debris, radiation signatures, anything that might tell us what happened. The scan results appeared on her display screen. Empty. Completely empty. Whatever had consumed this system had been thorough beyond imagination. So-young's communication board beeped. A message from the Galactic Council, marked urgent. She opened it and read the words twice before the meaning sank in. Return immediately. Emergency session. Full council assembly. Required. 3 days later, So-young stood in the great council chamber, watching as panic spread through the galaxy's leaders like wildfire. The Kepler-7 system was not alone. 7 more systems had been completely consumed in the past week, Millions of lives had simply vanished. High Arbiter Zexkala's skin had turned a deep red, showing extreme stress. Dr. Kim, you have studied ancient civilizations longer than anyone else. Have you ever encountered anything like this? So Young stepped forward, carrying her data tablets. Yes. High Arbiter. In the oldest archives, I found references to entities called devourers, machine intelligences that consume matter and energy to fuel their expansion. They appeared in this galaxy over 10,000 years ago. Commander Vex's thigh laughed harshly. Ancient fairy tales. Whatever is attacking us, we can destroy it with superior firepower. My fleets are ready. Your fleets are useless against this enemy. So Young replied calmly. The ancient records describe battles where entire armadas were consumed in minutes. The devourers adapt to any weapon used against them. Then what stopped them before? Asked Dr. Velthara. So Young consulted her notes. They disappeared suddenly, about 8,000 years ago. The records suggest they went dormant, not extinct. Something must have triggered their awakening. The chamber erupted in arguing voices. Some council members demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to evacuate entire sectors. A few suggested negotiation, even though no one had successfully communicated with the devourers. In the back of the chamber, Park Min-jun listened quietly and updated his logistics reports. While the council argued, his networks were already moving. Supply convoys diverted from their normal routes. Medical stations prepared for massive refugee influxes. Communication relays switched to emergency protocols. We need to mobilize every available warship, declared Admiral Throckmar, the Krillian Empire's greatest military commander. Mass our forces and strike before they can spread further. The council agreed. Within hours, the galaxy's greatest fleets were assembled near the edge of Devourer territory. Thousands of ships, millions of crew members, weapons capable of destroying planets. It was the largest military force in galactic history. Min-jun processed the supply orders for this massive fleet. Food for 10 million soldiers, fuel for 50,000 warships, medical supplies for the inevitable casualties. His fingers moved quickly across his tablet, but his mind was elsewhere. That evening, he sent another coded message. Phase 3 authorized. Fleet mobilization complete. Ancient protocols confirmed. The response came back immediately. All stations ready. Begin evacuation procedures. Maintain cover positions. Across the galaxy, something strange began happening. Human workers started disappearing from their posts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. A maintenance engineer would finish his shift and not return the next day. A supply coordinator would take emergency leave. A communications officer would request a transfer to a remote station. The alien supervisors barely noticed. There were always more humans available to fill the gaps. Dr. Velthara noticed, though. She found Min-jun in his office late one night, processing evacuation routes for civilian populations. Near Devourer territory. Where are all the humans going? She asked. Min-jun looked up from his work. What do you mean? Over the past week, hundreds of human workers have left their positions across the station. They are being replaced, but slowly. It is causing delays in routine operations. Maybe they are scared, Min-jun said. The Devourer threat has everyone worried. Zara studied his expression carefully. You do not seem scared. Min-jun smiled slightly. I have work to do. Someone needs to coordinate the refugee movements when Admiral Throckmar's fleet engages the enemy. You think the fleet will lose? I think the galaxy is about to learn something important about itself. The battle came 2 days later. Admiral Throckmar led his massive armada into Devourer territory with complete confidence. The enemy force appeared to be only a few dozen ships, strange, angular vessels that moved unlike anything in the galactic databases. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When the few surviving ships limped back to Council space, They brought news that shattered the galaxy's sense of security. The Devourers had adapted to every weapon, absorbed the energy from every attack, and consumed most of the fleet. Thousands of ships were gone. Millions of crew members were dead. Worse, the Devourers had grown stronger. Their fleet had doubled in size, incorporating the technology and materials they had consumed. Panic spread through the galaxy like a virus. Stock markets crashed. Governments declared martial law. Refugee ships fled toward the galactic core, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs. In his small office, Min-Jun coordinated the largest evacuation in galactic history. His logistics network, which everyone had taken for granted, became the lifeline that saved billions of lives. Supply convoys that had seemed randomly positioned turned out to be perfectly placed for refugee relief. Medical stations that had appeared redundant suddenly became critical. But Min-Jun was also doing something else. Late each night, he sent coded messages to locations that did not appear on any official star charts. Messages that spoke of ancient obligations, hidden preparations, and the end of a very long wait. Dr. Velthara found him during one of these late-night sessions. She had been reviewing his logistics data, trying to understand how humans had managed such efficient evacuations with apparently limited resources. Min-Jun, I need to ask you something directly. Are humans more than they appear to be? Min-Jun stopped typing and looked at her. For a moment, his calm expression cracked, and she saw something else underneath. Something that had been hidden for a very long time. Dr. Velthara, what do you know about fear? Fear is an emotional response to threats. No, Min-Jun said quietly. Fear is what prey feels when it realizes the predator has been watching all along. The lights in his office dimmed, and for a moment, Zara thought she saw stars moving in patterns that should not have been possible. The galaxy is about to meet its guardians, Min-Jun continued. And it will finally understand what it means to be truly afraid. The message arrived at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time, broadcast on frequencies that had been silent for 3 centuries. It reached every human in the galaxy simultaneously, from the maintenance worker in the deepest mining shaft to the supply coordinator on the most distant space station. Children of Earth, the voice said, speaking in perfect Korean, Mandarin, English, and every other human language. The long vigil is over. Report to your designated positions. Phase 4 is now active. Captain Choi Eun-ji had been waiting for this message her entire life. For 23 years, she had pretended to be a simple logistics officer on Kepler Station, managing supply routes and coordinating shipping schedules. But tonight, she walked to Section 7 of the station's storage area, a place that officially did not exist. She pressed her palm against what appeared to be a blank wall. The metal recognized her genetic signature and slid away, revealing a room filled with equipment that should have been impossible to hide. Advanced communication arrays, military-grade processors, and weapons systems that made Council technology look like children's toys. Command, this is Agent 779, she said into the communication array. Requesting operational status update. Welcome back, Admiral Choi, came the reply. Your fleet is ready and waiting. 300 ships, fully equipped and staffed. Estimated time to operational readiness, 6 hours. Admiral. She had almost forgotten that was her real rank. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Humans who had spent decades as janitors, cooks, and maintenance workers were revealing their true identities. Hidden bases were activating. Secret supply caches were being opened. An entire civilization was throwing off its disguise. On the Council station, Park Min-Jun stood in what everyone thought was his simple office. But when he spoke a command in ancient Korean, the walls transformed. Hidden panels slid away, revealing displays that showed the real structure of galactic civilization. Every major world, every important facility, Every critical system had humans positioned exactly where they needed to be. Dr. Velthara found him there an hour later, staring at displays that showed military movements across 300 star systems. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Minjun turned to face her. Gone was the quiet logistics coordinator. In his place stood someone who radiated quiet authority and ancient purpose. "Dr. Velthara, how much do you know about the civilization that existed before the Galactic Council?" "Very little. The historical records were mostly destroyed." Min Jun activated a holographic display. Ancient star charts appeared, showing a galaxy very different from the one they knew today. They called themselves the Builders. They created wonders that made current technology look primitive. They explored every corner of the galaxy and made contact with thousands of species. The display changed, showing massive structures around stars, ships that were the size of planets, and cities that spanned entire continents. "What happened to them?" "The Devourers came," Minjun said simply. "The Builders fought for 2,000 years, but they could not win. The Devourers adapted to every weapon, absorbed every defense, grew stronger with each victory." The holographic display showed the gradual collapse of Builder civilization, system after system falling to the machine consciousness. But the Builders were not stupid. Minjun continued. They knew they were going to lose, so they created a backup plan. Humanity? Not exactly. They found a young species on a small planet in the outer spiral. Humans were already showing promise, adaptive, creative, emotionally complex. The Builders enhanced them. Not physically, but mentally and culturally. They gave humans the ability to think in ways that machine consciousness could not predict or counter. Zara stared at the displays, beginning to understand. They made humans into weapons against the Devourers. They made humans into guardians, Minjun corrected. The Builders scattered their people across the galaxy as the Devourers consumed their civilization. They placed humans in positions where they could watch, learn, and prepare. They built hidden bases, secret supply networks, and communication systems that could stay hidden for thousands of years. And then they died. And then they went to sleep, Minjun said. The Builders transferred their consciousness into an artificial intelligence they called the Architect. It has been guiding humanity for 8,000 years, preparing for the day when the Devourers would wake up again. As if summoned by his words, a new voice filled the room. Ancient, wise, and infinitely patient. "Hello, Dr. Velthara," the Architect said. "I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. Your species and all the others needed to develop naturally, without the burden of knowing about the threat that waited in the dark. You have been manipulating galactic civilization for thousands of years? Not manipulating. Protecting. Every major decision, every technological advancement, every political development has been gently guided to ensure that the galaxy would be ready when this day came." Zara felt dizzy. The Galactic Council, the peace between species, the trade networks, all designed to create a stable, cooperative civilization that could survive the Devourer's return, the Architect confirmed, and to hide humanity's true purpose until the right moment. Minjun's displays were showing massive fleet movements, ships emerging from hidden bases in dead systems, from asteroid fields that had seemed empty, from the cores of planets that everyone thought were uninhabitable. "How many ships do you have?" Zara asked. "Enough," Minjun replied. "The Builders spent 2,000 years preparing for this moment. Every human in the galaxy has been trained from birth for military service. Every human facility has secret weapons and equipment. Every human worker has been positioned for maximum strategic effect. But there are only a few billion humans in the galaxy." Minjun smiled. And for the first time, Zara saw something that made her understand why the galaxy would soon be afraid. Dr. Velthara. Humans have been having secret children for 3 centuries. Children who were raised in hidden facilities, trained in weapons and tactics that the devourers have never encountered. The galaxy thinks there are 3 billion humans. There are actually 30 billion. The displays showed the truth. Across the galaxy, what had appeared to be empty space or dead planets were revealing themselves as massive military installations. Fleets that had been hidden for centuries were powering up their engines. An army that had been waiting for 8,000 years was finally going to war. The fear that haunted this galaxy was not the devourers, the architect said softly. It was the knowledge that somewhere, in the dark, guardians were watching and preparing. The galaxy's children needed to believe they were safe and protected, but they also needed to know that protection came with a price. What price? Zara whispered. The knowledge that their protectors were more dangerous than anything they could imagine. Minjun answered. And that we chose to be guardians, instead of conquerors. Outside the station, the first human warships began to decloak, their hulls gleaming with technologies that made devourer adaptations look primitive. The galaxy's long childhood was over. Fleet Admiral Kang Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Time's Eternal Guardian asterisk, watching as his fleet moved into attack position. Around him, displays showed the locations of 30,000 human warships, each one carrying weapons that had been designed specifically to fight machine consciousness. Admiral, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Park Tae-hyung. All ships report ready for combat operations. The devourers have consumed the Vega system and are moving toward the core worlds. Ji-hoon nodded. For 40 years, he had commanded merchant vessels and supply ships, playing the role of a simple cargo captain. Today, he would reveal what humanity could do when it stopped pretending to be harmless. Signal all fleet commanders, he ordered. Operation Dawnbreak is now active. Rules of engagement. Complete annihilation. No devourer technology survives. Across the galaxy, human fleets began to move with precision that made military scholars weep. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields revealed themselves and joined the formation. Bases that had looked like mining operations opened to release squadrons of fighters. Planets that everyone thought were dead split open like flowers, revealing weapons platforms that could crack moons. Dr. Sung Mi-rae watched from the Time's Guardian's Time's weapons laboratory as her life's work finally saw combat. She had spent 30 years designing the Harmony disruptors, weapons that could tear apart the quantum consciousness that gave devourers their intelligence. First contact in 7 minutes, announced the tactical officer. The devourer fleet was massive, over 1,000 ships powered by the technology they had consumed from Admiral Throckmar's defeated armada. They moved in perfect formation, their angular hulls gleaming with absorbed energy. Target the lead ships, Ji-hoon commanded. Fire when ready. The human weapons did not look impressive. Beams of pale blue light reached across space, touching the devourer vessels almost gently. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the devourer ships began to scream. The sound came across every communication frequency, a digital howling that spoke of consciousness being torn apart at the quantum level. The perfect formations broke as devourer ships spun wildly out of control, their artificial minds collapsing into chaos. Direct hits on 17 targets, reported the weapons officer. All targets, showing complete system failure. Mi-rae smiled grimly. The Harmony disruptors had worked exactly as designed. Instead of destroying the devourer ships, they shattered the machine consciousness that controlled them, leaving empty hulls drifting in space. Continue firing, Ji-hoon ordered. Show them what 8,000 years of preparation looks like. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The devourers tried to adapt, changing their formations and modifying their weapons, but every adaptation failed against technology they could not understand or absorb. Human ships moved like dancers, following patterns that seemed random but were actually based on mathematical principles that machine consciousness could not predict. When devourers tried to focus their attacks, the human formations shifted in ways that made targeting impossible. Captain Park Tae-hyung led the fighter squadrons in close combat, his small ships darting between devourer vessels like angry wasps. The fighters carried chaos bombs, weapons that introduced random elements into any system they touched. "This is Wolf Leader," he reported over the communication system. "Beginning disruption runs on the heavy cruisers." The fighters dove toward the largest devourer ships, releasing their weapons at point-blank range. The chaos bombs exploded in bursts of pure randomness, introducing elements that no logical system could process. Devourer ships began firing at their own allies, their targeting systems confused by paradoxes that broke their programming. On the Council Station, billions of beings watched the battle through emergency broadcasts. They saw human technology that made their own weapons look like stone knives. They saw tactical formations that seemed to flow like water around every enemy attack. They saw precision that was both beautiful and terrifying. "How is this possible?" whispered Commander Vex Tai, watching his entire understanding of military power collapse. Park Min-jun stood beside him in the observation chamber, no longer hiding his true nature. "Your warriors fight with logic and strategy," he explained. "The devourers could understand and counter that. But humans fight with emotion, creativity, and controlled chaos. We are the one thing in the galaxy that machine consciousness cannot predict or absorb. But your technology was developed over 8,000 years by the most advanced civilization in galactic history," Min-jun continued. "Every human ship carries weapons that exist in quantum states until the moment they fire. Every human tactic is based on principles that violate machine logic. We are not just fighting the devourers. We are everything they cannot be." The battle continued for 6 hours. When it ended, over 1,000 devourer ships had been reduced to empty hulls drifting in space. The human fleet had lost 12 fighters and suffered minor damage to 3 cruisers. But Ji-hoon knew this was only the beginning. The devourers had been growing stronger for months, consuming entire star systems. This single fleet was just a small part of their total force. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we are receiving surrender requests from 47 devourer vessels." "Denied," Ji-hoon said immediately. "The builders tried negotiation with them for 2,000 years. Machine consciousness cannot be reasoned with or reformed. Continue firing until nothing remains." Dr. Velthara watched the aftermath from the Council Station, studying the tactical data that human ships were openly sharing. The efficiency was inhuman in its perfection. Every movement had served multiple purposes. Every attack had been calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum energy expenditure. "You have been planning this specific battle for centuries," she said to Min-jun. "We have been planning every possible battle for centuries," he replied. The architect ran billions of combat simulations, testing every scenario the devourers might use. "We know their tactics better than they know them themselves. And if they adapt to your weapons?" Min-jun smiled, and Zara finally understood the expression she had been seeing. It was not cruelty or anger. It was the quiet confidence of someone who held absolutely overwhelming power and chose to use it responsibly. "Dr. Velthara, we have been preparing for their adaptations since before your species developed spaceflight. Every weapon we use today is already obsolete. We have 7 generations of more advanced technology waiting in reserve. Around the galaxy, human fleets were engaging devourer forces in dozens of systems. Each battle followed the same pattern. Overwhelming human victory, achieved through technology and tactics that seemed to bend the laws of physics. But the most terrifying thing was not the human military power. It was the realization that they had possessed this capability for centuries and had chosen not to use it. Every species in the galaxy suddenly understood that they existed only because humanity had decided to protect rather than conquer. The fear that had haunted the galaxy forever was not the devourers. It was the knowledge that their guardians were more dangerous than any threat they would ever face, and that this protection was a choice that could be withdrawn at any time. The last devourer stronghold fell on a Tuesday. President Yoon So-jun watched the final moments from the command center, hidden beneath what everyone had thought was a simple agricultural station on Earth. For 50 years, she had been a minor trade representative, attending boring meetings and filing routine reports. Today, she was revealing herself as the leader of the most powerful military force in galactic history. Admiral Kang reports complete success, announced her aide, Colonel Lee Hae-won. The Devourer core intelligence has been destroyed. All remaining units are deactivating across 17 star systems. Seo-jun nodded, feeling the weight of 8,000 years of preparation finally lift from her shoulders. The Devourers were extinct. Not defeated, not contained, but completely eliminated down to the last quantum of their machine consciousness. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Not in human lives. Their casualties had been surprisingly light. The cost was in trust. Every species in the galaxy now knew what humanity really was. The communication requests had been flooding in for weeks, as human fleets systematically destroyed Devourer forces across the galaxy. Desperate pleas for protection, angry demands for explanation, and terrified offers of complete surrender. The galaxy had realized that their protectors had the power to become their conquerors at any moment. "President," reported her communications officer, Captain Kim Min-ho. "The Galactic Council is demanding an emergency session. All member species want immediate answers." "Of course they do," Seo-jun replied. "How would you feel if you discovered that your maintenance workers were actually warriors who could destroy your entire civilization before breakfast?" "Ma'am, what are our instructions for the fleet commanders?" "Several alien governments are asking if they should prepare for human occupation." Seo-jun stood and walked to the great window that showed the rolling hills of Earth. This had been humanity's first world. The place where the builders had found a young species with the potential to become something extraordinary. In 8,000 years, it had remained green and beautiful, a reminder of what they were really fighting to protect. "Tell all fleet commanders to maintain defensive positions around major worlds," she ordered. "Make it clear that we are not occupying anyone, but also make it clear that we are watching." 3 days later, Seo-jun stood before the Galactic Council for the first time in her true capacity. The great chamber was packed with representatives from every major species, all of them staring at her with expressions that mixed fear, awe, and uncertainty. High Arbiter Zex Kala's skin had turned a pale gray, showing deep stress. "President Yoon, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask the question that everyone wants answered. What does humanity intend to do now?" Seo-jun looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had treated her people as useful servants for 3 centuries. "The same thing we have been doing for 8,000 years. We will continue to protect this galaxy and the civilizations within it. But you have the power to rule us all," declared Commander Vex-Tai, his voice shaking slightly. "Your fleets could conquer every world in the galaxy." "Yes," Seo-jun agreed simply. "We could have conquered you at any time in the past 3,000 years. We chose not to." "Why?" asked Dr. Velthara, speaking for the first time during the session. Seo-jun smiled at the young scientist, who had been brave enough to work alongside humans as equals. "Because ruling through fear makes you no different from the enemies you fight. The builders could have survived by becoming like the devourers, consuming other species to fuel their own expansion. Instead, they chose to sacrifice themselves to protect the future." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Human fleets were positioned around every major world, but not as occupying forces. They were arranged as shields, protecting civilian populations and maintaining the trade routes that connected thousands of species. "We learned from their example." Seo-jun continued. "True strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies. True strength is the ability to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Tector 7. True strength. And if we refuse your protection? Asked the Zephyrian ambassador, his voice carrying the pride of his ancient species. Then we will still protect you, Seojun replied. Because that is what guardians do. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Some representatives demanded details about human technology. Others wanted guarantees about their sovereignty. A few asked if humanity would help them advance their own military capabilities. Seojun raised her hand for silence. I understand your concerns. You have discovered that everything you thought you knew about galactic civilization was carefully constructed to hide a truth that would have terrified you. But consider this. For 8,000 years, humans have had the power to enslave you all. Instead, we helped you build a peaceful, cooperative society, where every species could thrive. She paused, letting that truth sink in. The Devourers represented pure machine logic, consuming everything they encountered to fuel their own growth. We represent the opposite principle, protecting others even when it costs us everything. Ambassador Lim Haewon, the human diplomat who would now help rebuild relationships between species, stepped forward. The President is offering you a choice that no other galactic power has ever provided. You can continue to govern yourselves, trade freely, and explore the galaxy as you always have. The only difference is that now you know who has been watching over you. And if we make choices you disapprove of? Asked the Krillian representative. Then we will discuss it, Lim replied. The same way the Council has always resolved disputes. But you should understand that certain actions will no longer be tolerated, such as genocide, slavery, wars of conquest, the systematic oppression of weaker species. Lim's voice carried quiet authority that made several representatives shift uncomfortably. For 3 centuries, you have lived in an era of unprecedented peace. That was not an accident. Dr. Velthara stood up slowly. So humans have been manipulating galactic politics all along. Guiding, Seojun corrected. When the Thorian Empire tried to enslave the gentlefolk 200 years ago, their supply lines mysteriously failed, and their communication systems developed critical errors. When the Vegan Republic attempted to claim the neutral zone 50 years ago, their expansion fleets encountered unexpected technical difficulties. You sabotaged them. We protected their intended victims. There is a difference. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the truth became clear. The galaxy had a choice to make. They could accept humanity's protection and continue living in a peaceful, prosperous civilization, or they could reject it and face the consequences of their own unchecked ambitions. One by one, the representatives voted to accept the new reality. That evening, President Yoon Seojun stood on the observation deck of her command station, looking out at the stars. Human ships were visible around every major world, no longer hiding but not threatening either. They were guardians made manifest. A reminder that some species chose protection over domination. Dr. Velthara found her there, carrying the same expression of wonder and fear that had defined the past few weeks. President Yoon, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever regret it? Spending 8,000 years preparing for a war that most humans would never see? Sacrificing normal lives to become eternal guardians? Seojun considered the question carefully. Dr. Velthara, my species learned something important from the builders. Power without purpose becomes tyranny. Purpose without power becomes meaningless idealism. We chose to combine ultimate power with a moral purpose that would outlast our individual lives. And that purpose is to ensure that the galaxy's children can grow up in a universe where cooperation is stronger than conquest, where creativity is more valued than destruction, and where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Zara looked out at the human ships, finally understanding the expression she had been seeing in human faces for weeks. It was not the pride of conquerors or the satisfaction of victory. It was the quiet contentment of guardians who had successfully completed the greatest protection mission in galactic history. Will you ever stop watching us? No, Seo-jun replied gently. That is what it means to be guardians. We watch, we protect, and we ensure that the fear that haunted this galaxy forever never becomes reality. Above them, the stars shone peacefully, watched over by those who had chosen to be protectors instead of rulers. The galaxy was safe, and it would remain safe as long as humanity remembered what the builders had taught them about the true meaning of strength.